One of the great traditions at the Haas School is choosing the commencement speaker. Each year, we call upon an alumna or alumnus of uncommon distinction to address the graduating class. In choosing the commencement speaker, we seek a person who embodies a commitment to excellence and a distinguished record of achievement. In the Berkeley Haas tradition, we also seek an individual who personifies our four defining principles. Today is no exception. If you've ever wondered what it takes to make a successful show like American Idol or Family Feud, our distinguished speaker could tell you all about that. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you our commencement speaker, Sangeeta Desai. Sangeeta is the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Executive Officer for the Emerging Markets Group at Fremantle in London. She is a graduate of our Haas undergraduate program, Bachelor of Science, 1998. FremantleMedia, creative powerhouse that produces over 10,000 hours of programming a year. In her role as COO, CEO, Sangeeta is leading Fremantle's expansion into Latin America, Central and Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. FremantleMedia is a division of RTL Group, Europe's biggest entertainment company. RTL produces and distributes such TV mega hits as America's Got Talent, Idols, X Factor, and Family Feud. Sangeeta brings a multicultural perspective to her career. Born in London, spent her childhood in Dubai, Sri Lanka, and Oman, before she arrived at UC Berkeley as an undergraduate. She said in a Berkeley Haas magazine interview last fall, quote, "Coming from a small place like Oman, which was very sheltered, to a place like Berkeley was mind-blowing. I can only imagine." At Haas, she discovered investment banking and the world of big-ticket mergers and acquisitions. Her first job was with J.P. Morgan in Manhattan. She earned her MBA at Wharton in 2004, joined Goldman Sachs in London, where she was introduced to the media and entertainment business. But rather than advising, she wanted to be the one making the investment decisions. So in 2005, she shifted into private equity with Apax Partners. There, she was asked to work with one of the firm's underperforming assets, HIT Entertainment, which owns the Thomas the Train franchise. It's good stuff for if you're not parents yet. In a question the status quo moment, she gave up her position as principal at Apex and took a full-time job at HIT, a risky thing to do. However, she became HIT's chief operating officer and successfully transformed the company by realigning its business operations and restructuring its teams. 3 years later, Mattel bought HIT for $680 million. She joined FremantleMedia. She again played a significant role in rewriting a business script for a global audience. But I will let her tell you more about that. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our own Sangeeta Desai.
Thank you, Dean Lyons. So I have to apologize in advance because I am using speaking notes today. Thanks to my very first class at Haas, Business Communications 100. Still on the syllabus, it sounds like. I still remember it. One of our first assignments was to prepare a speech for the class. And at this point in my educational career, I had finely tuned my memorization skills. So I prepared my speech, I practiced it a few times. But when I got up to speak in front of the class, I completely froze. I couldn't remember a single word. And as I looked around the classroom at my classmates, they were clearly looking at me thinking, thank God it's her and not me. But they were also smiling at me sympathetically and encouragingly. But not my professor. My professor instead chose to use that moment to make an example of me and to demonstrate to the class how strong business communication skills meant being able to think clearly under pressure. Well, Professor, I don't know if it taught me that, but it certainly taught me never to speak in front of a group of people without speaking notes, particularly Haas students. Class of 2017, congratulations. Today is your day. You've earned it. A day like today inevitably takes one back to their own graduation day, in my case, 19 years ago. And as I was preparing my speaking remarks, I thought to myself, what do I remember about that day? And the honest answer is not much. I remember celebrating with my friends and family, got my parents to take us to Chez Panisse that evening, followed by a night of partying at Henry's, and the inevitable stop at Top Dog on the way home. But what I definitely do not remember is who my commencement speaker was, never mind what he or she said. So with the full knowledge that most of you will not remember who I am or what I say, I'll do my best to make it a worthwhile 10 minutes of your life on this important day that will and should be remembered for the fun and the celebration and the people that you choose to spend it with. So with that, I'll get going. And yes, you heard me right. I said 10 minutes. I live in London, and I used this incredible invitation to speak here today to have a reunion with some of my Cal friends in San Francisco this weekend. And as you can imagine, there was lots of reminiscing about our time at Cal. And we all agreed that when we graduated in 1998, we graduated with a sense of optimism for the future. On the global landscape, the Iron Curtain had well and truly come down. The Cold War that we had grown up with was over. And Western ideals of liberalism, democracy, and capitalism had won. And not just militarily, but they had won people's hearts and minds around the world. People looked to the US and saw a country that was prospering economically, while also protecting basic human rights, freedom of speech, and civil liberties. And importantly, in 1998, September 11 hadn't happened yet. It'll be hard for most of you to imagine, but your parents will remember what it was like before that dreadful day. I still remember being able to catch a flight from New York to Boston and arriving 15 minutes before my flight and jumping on the flight like I was catching a train. And we didn't know it then, but we were about to embark on a pretty much uninterrupted 10-year period of growth and prosperity, spurred on by the internet, which was just getting going, improved communications, mobile phones, indeed smartphones. So yes, we graduated with a sense of optimism for the future. Fast forward 19 years, and you guys are graduating into a very different landscape. On the global front, we've had 2 major wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, civil wars in Syria and Iraq, an ongoing refugee crisis of unprecedented scale, and sadly, terrorism has become part of our everyday existence. And on the economic front, that same deregulation of financial markets and institutions that drove so much of the growth in the 2000s also led to it come crashing down in 2008. And although we've seen a return to growth in most markets, moderate growth, the aftermath of that crisis is still being felt, particularly amongst lower income groups. It turns out large segments of society have been left behind, and people are pissed off. And they've shown their disaffection with the so-called establishment, first in the UK last year with the Brexit vote to leave the European Union, then in the US in November with the presidential elections, and more recently in France, where both candidates in the final runoff were from outside mainstream political parties. That, my dear class of 2017, is the world that you're graduating into. It's a world characterized by volatility and uncertainty. Quite a big contrast to mine. However, fear not. It is precisely out of times of uncertainty that the greatest leaders are born. Great leaders are provoked by the challenge, they take energy from the challenge, and they know when leadership is needed. As the saying goes, stormy seas make for great captains. And I would argue that you have more reasons than ever before to be optimistic about the future and to be our greatest generation of leaders yet. Why is that? First, you guys are smarter, better equipped, and more worldly wise than previous generations that have sat in your seats. By virtue of the fact that you are here, you must be. Globalization, the internet have all meant there's more access than ever before. The bar has gone up. It's more competitive. Just to get into Cal, you need to be smarter, more outgoing, more dynamic than your peers around the world. I'm pretty sure that if I had to apply to Cal today, I wouldn't be getting in. Forget about Tahaz. Second reason to be optimistic is that the world is your oyster today like never before. And I mean that in every sense. You can start a business today from pretty much anywhere and immediately target the whole world as your audience, as your consumer. No longer do you have to go into investment banking or consulting to have a good business career. The avenues available to you are undefined and unlimited. It's up to you to choose your path, and the opportunities abound. So there we have it. The world is volatile, uncertain, more competitive than ever before, but you guys are the best and the brightest, and opportunities abound. It's both terrifying and electrifying. So what advice can I give you as you begin your journey on this uncertain and yet opportunity-filled landscape? Follow your gut and use it to take calculated risks and seize opportunities. There's only one thing you can be certain of today, and that's that your path will not be as you expect it to be. Life throws all kinds of curveballs and obstacles and opportunities your way, and through all that, let your gut be your guide. That's not to say discard your education or your wonderful years at Cal. On the contrary, your education very much informs your gut. But your gut also takes into account a very important component, and that's your heart. And your heart knows you better than anyone else, better than any common sense or rationale. And in my experience, it normally gets it right. In 2009, I was flying high as a private equity executive in London, when through a combination of luck and circumstance, I got the opportunity to join a company called Hit Entertainment, a leading preschool kids entertainment business that had brands like Thomas the Tank Engine, Bob the Builder, Barney. Sounds great, right? Well, actually, not so much. The company was struggling under a mountain of debt and facing likely bankruptcy. In fact, the debt markets were valuing the entire company at $300 million, and it had debt outstanding of $580 million. And the financial performance of the business was declining through a host of operational challenges and a global recession in its major markets, and a very, very demotivated and disillusioned staff. So on the face of it, it wasn't an obvious choice, and I talked to many people about it, both professional and personal, and almost unanimously got the response, "Are you crazy? Why would you give up a lucrative, highly reputable private equity job and all your future carried interest for a failing asset?" So it seemed like an easy answer, but the problem is my gut, my heart was telling me to take the job. And it wasn't a blind faith led only by my heart. I knew that whatever happened at the company, I would get the learning experience of my life. And it was only because it was a failing, struggling business that at the age of 34, with no operational experience whatsoever, that I was being given the opportunity to lead the company by a very dynamic CEO who was willing to take a risk on me. And I knew those things would never, ever line up for me again. So I took the job. And it ended up being one of the best experiences of my life. We turned the company around, we got it growing again, we got the staff happy to be working there. And indeed, when we sold it a few years later, we had increased the value of the company from $300 million when I joined to $680 million when we sold it to Mattel. And thank you. And it was a team effort. For me, it was a valuable lesson in teamwork, leadership, and people management. Skills I would have never learned if I had stayed in my cushy private equity job. And in fact, even if the company had failed and we hadn't succeeded, I would have still learned those valuable skills that have served me really well in my career going forward. So that's my advice to you as you embark into this uncertain yet opportunity-filled landscape. Follow your gut and take calculated risks and seize opportunities. And finally, before I leave you to begin your journeys, I have one parting plea. Times of uncertainty do not only breed great leaders, they also leave room for irresponsible leadership. Just as some of our greatest leaders in history, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, were born out of times of strife, so were some of the most evil men and women in history. So as you begin your journeys, keep your moral compass close and hold on to it tightly. Doing the right thing will not always be the easy thing, but you have a responsibility to yourselves and to this wonderful institution whose name you will now bear forever, to always do the honorable and the right thing. And it is now in these uncertain times where nothing is really clear that we need our business leaders to provide us with that moral leadership that will help steer us through these choppy waters and into calmer seas. And with that, I once again congratulate you, class of 2017. I wish you all the best for your future endeavors. Enjoy the journey.